All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to explore the mind of Christopher Langan.
Oh, this will be good.
This guy has been called, like, the smartest man in the world,
Wow.
with an IQ reported to be somewhere between
I've heard this.
195 and 210.
Yeah.
But, and here's the thing, you won't find him, like, heading up some research lab
Right.
or leading some big tech company.
Yeah.
The guy lives a pretty simple life on a farm in Missouri.
Interesting.
So we're going to unpack some of his key ideas about reality, consciousness,
Right.
and the forces that shape our world.
It's a fascinating paradox, though, isn't it?
It is.
You'd think someone with that level of intellect would be, in some position of authority.
You would.
Or influence, right?
Yeah.
But Langan's story, it kind of makes you question
It does.
those assumptions about intelligence and success.
Absolutely. It's like almost like a real-life Goodwill Hunting
Right.
situation.
Right.
He's had to deal with economic hardship,
Yeah.
faced, academics who dismissed his ideas,
Yeah.
and ultimately just chose a path outside of those traditional intellectual pursuits.
He even talks about this one calculus professor
Oh, yeah?
who told him that he didn't have the
Come on.
mental firepower for mathematics.
Are you kidding me?
Imagine being told that by your own professor.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I think anyone who's ever felt underestimated can definitely relate
Totally.
to that experience.
Underestimated or told they weren't good enough
Yeah.
at something.
Yeah, but Langan's take on it is really insightful, though.
Oh, yeah.
He says that true intelligence,
Okay.
it isn't just about having a high IQ.
Right.
It's also about focus
Yeah.
and what he calls mental aperture.
Mental aperture. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great point, right? Because it's not enough to just be smart.
No.
You got to be able to apply it. You need to see the bigger picture.
Yes.
Make connections between ideas,
That's
right?
exactly.
And that's what mental aperture is all about.
That's it.
Expanding your perspective.
Yeah, and that's something, we can all work on, regardless of our IQ scores.
Exactly.
So Langan has this really ambitious idea.
Okay.
He wants to create a theory of everything,
Wow.
a model that explains the entire universe.
Okay.
He calls it the
I'm intrigued.
cognitive theoretic model of the universe, or CTMU.
Okay.
So CTMU.
Right. And it gets pretty complex.
It does.
But the core idea, I think,
Yeah,
is really fascinating.
it is.
He's essentially saying that reality is both
Right.
geometric and linguistic.
Right.
It's like, mind and matter intertwined
Okay.
at the most fundamental level.
So for those of us who aren't theoretical physicists, right?
Sure.
What does it actually mean for mind and matter
Yeah,
to be intertwined?
that's a good question.
Like, is this table we're sitting at, like, conscious?
Well, maybe not conscious in the way that we humans experience consciousness, But what Langan is suggesting is that consciousness, right, might be a fundamental property of the universe itself,
Okay.
not just something that emerges in complex biological systems like our brains,
Gotcha.
but rather it's woven into the very fabric of reality.
Oh, okay. That's a pretty mind-bending idea.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
And it leads Langan to some pretty interesting conclusions
Oh?
about the existence of God.
Okay.
He argues that because reality itself has an identity, right?
Okay.
That identity possesses
Okay.
qualities that we often attribute to God.
Right. And he even brings up the biblical story of the burning bush,
I was just thinking that.
where God says, I am, like, I am existence itself.
Right?
It's a pretty powerful way to connect this, like, complex philosophical idea
It is.
to a familiar story.
Yeah. And to be clear, Langan's view isn't quite the same as traditional pantheism,
Okay.
where, God is seen as being equal to the universe.
Right.
He leans more towards panentheism, which means God encompasses the universe,
Okay.
but also transcends it.
Okay.
Like God is both within the universe
Right.
and beyond it at the same time.
So if consciousness is really woven into the universe itself,
Yeah.
does that mean even, like, inanimate objects have
Yeah.
some level of awareness?
Well, that's a question Langan explores, yeah.
Okay.
He proposes this concept of identity operators. These are like the building blocks of consciousness,
Gotcha.
and they exist everywhere,
Okay.
processing information from the world around them.
So in a way, even this table we're sitting at
Yeah.
is interacting with the universe
In a sense, yeah.
on a conscious level.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, I know.
It is wild. So this idea of a conscious universe,
Yeah.
Kind of leads us to another question, right?
I'm sure it does.
This question of free will.
Yes.
I mean, if everything's connected,
Right.
consciousness is fundamental.
Yeah.
Does that mean that our choices are predetermined?
Good question.
Yeah, like, do we actually have free will?
Langan actually argues that we do.
Really?
He believes our choices genuinely matter. And that the universe isn't some kind of fixed mechanistic system.
So how does that work then?
Oh.
Yeah, because that seems to clash.
It seems like it would, yeah.
With this idea of a universe where,
yeah,
everything is interconnected and conscious.
So he actually brings in the simulation hypothesis here.
Okay.
Langan suggests that reality itself might be a form of self-simulation where causation operates, not just from the past to the future, but also from the future to the past.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's a concept he calls metacausation.
Yeah. So is he saying time travel is possible?
Not exactly time travel,
Okay.
but he is challenging our conventional understanding of time and causality. This idea of metacausation, it suggests a more fluid and interconnected view of how events unfold in the universe.
So the past, present, and future.
Yeah, kind of.
They're all influencing each other.
It's like they're all influencing each other.
In ways we might not fully grasp. We might not fully grasp, yeah.
Okay, before we lose ourselves completely in this mind-bending world of metacausation, let's bring it back down to earth a little bit and talk about the afterlife.
Okay.
Does Langan believe in life after death?
He does, yeah.
Okay.
He believes that we persist after death.
Okay.
But where we end up, he says, depends on, the choices we make in life.
Right.
And our relationship with God.
So is he talking about heaven and hell as, like, literal places?
Not quite, no.
Okay.
He sees them more as states of being. Rather than physical locations.
Okay, so, like, our actions have consequences that extend beyond our physical lives.
That's what he's saying, yeah. Gotcha. So if we align ourselves with good, we experience, like, a positive state of being.
Exactly.
And if we choose evil, we experience a negative state.
Right.
And what about people who, like, reject God entirely?
Yeah.
What happens to them?
Langan suggests that for those who completely turn away from God, oblivion might be a possibility.
Oblivion, wow.
Their consciousness, lacking a connection to the divine, simply ceases to exist.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty sobering thought.
It is.
So let's shift gears a bit.
Sure.
And talk about something a little darker, this nature of evil, and whether Langan believes in the devil.
Right, he does. He believes in both Satan and Lucifer.
Okay.
But he makes a surprising distinction between them.
Okay, all right, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
So he describes Lucifer as the fallen angel who was exiled to earth. But he also connects Lucifer with light and the bringing of reality to us.
So Lucifer isn't necessarily like the embodiment of pure evil.
Right. Yeah. He seems to see Lucifer as a more complex figure.
Okay.
On the other hand, he describes Satan as representing pure negation.
Okay.
And here's the chilling part.
Okay.
Langan says that Satan lacks coherence. Except through human beings.
Oh, wow.
He actually says...
What's the quote?
Satan can nucleate power structures that can be exploited.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Like that the devil's power is somehow amplified through human actions and systems.
Right. And it makes you wonder.
It does.
If Lucifer brought us reality, what role do humans play?
That's a good question.
In shaping that reality.
Yeah.
Right.
For better.
For better or worse.
Or for worse.
That's definitely something to ponder.
We're gonna have to think about that one for a second.
It's definitely.
Okay, so let's move on to Langan's views on politics and society.
Okay.
He's expressed some pretty strong concerns about the rise of globalism and the concentration of power in the hands of a small elite.
Right, and it's important to understand that Langan's critique of globalism, it's rooted in his belief in individual liberty and free markets.
Okay.
He's not against globalization entirely.
Gotcha.
But he's very concerned about what he calls monopoly capitalism.
Okay, so what does he mean by monopoly capitalism?
He's talking about situations where corporations and governments collude to control markets and limit choices.
Okay.
He sees this as a threat to individual freedom and a way for the powerful to consolidate their wealth and influence.
He brings up things like, the push for electric cars and the banning of incandescent light bulbs.
Right.
As examples of this kind of control.
It's like he sees this pattern in these seemingly unrelated events. He argues that they're all part of this larger agenda to centralize control and limit individual freedom.
And he suggests this agenda is driven by a desire for world domination, orchestrated by powerful institutions like central banks.
Right. Now let's be honest here.
Okay.
Some of this sounds like
it kind of does.
It's bordering on conspiracy theory territory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's his take on that?
Does he believe in conspiracies?
Yeah.
Well, he actually says that conspiracy makes the world go round.
So is he a full-blown conspiracy theorist then?
Well, he actually makes a distinction between harmless conspiracies like trade secrets and more nefarious plots aimed at manipulating and controlling people.
But he does seem to believe that intelligence agencies are playing a significant role.
He does. He thinks they're playing a role.
In this global power structure.
Yeah, in this global power structure.
He even claims that he's attracted the attention of these agencies himself.
It wouldn't be surprising, would it?
It wouldn't.
I mean, if someone with Langan's intellect and unconventional views...
They'd want it.
Yeah, they'd probably want to keep tabs on him.
Keep tabs on him, right?
I mean, they tend to keep tabs on people who challenge the status quo, right?
Yeah.
Especially if those people have a large following or influence.
Speaking of unconventional views, he also claims that high-ranking intelligence officials believe in aliens and UFOs.
Really?
Yeah.
So is he suggesting that there's a cover-up of alien activity?
He doesn't say that explicitly.
Okay.
But he does acknowledge...
What is he?
The widespread reports of UFO sightings, and even admits to witnessing unexplained phenomena himself.
Wow. Okay.
He actually theorizes that the line between mind and matter might be blurrier than we think, allowing for phenomena that defy our current understanding of physics.
So, are we talking about the possibility of extraterrestrial life here?
He doesn't offer definitive answers. But he does encourage us
to what?
To consider the possibility.
To consider it.
That our understanding of reality might be incomplete.
Might be incomplete, okay.
And he leaves open the question.
About?
Of whether the intelligence community might be involved in concealing evidence.
Concealing evidence, yeah.
Of alien activity.
That's a lot to unpack. We've covered
a lot.
A lot of ground here.
So let's shift gears again. And talk about something a little more grounded. Langan's core values. He seems to place a lot of emphasis on,
On what?
Truth.
Yeah.
Meaning and living a life in service to something greater than oneself.
Absolutely. And he even introduces this concept of a telic economy.
Telic economy?
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's not just about money.
Okay.
It encompasses truth, beauty, and the pursuit of purpose.
Okay, so it's about aligning yourself with higher values rather than just
chasing material wealth.
Right. So what does this mean for our everyday lives, Yeah,
what does it mean for us?
How do we participate in this telic economy?
Right.
Well, it's about recognizing that true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents.
Right.
It's about seeking knowledge, understanding beauty, and living a life that's aligned with your purpose.
And speaking of beauty, Langan seems to believe that beauty is more than just
a subjective preference.
He does. He actually thinks.
He thinks
it's an objective standard.
Wow.
Connected to the idea that things have a purpose.
Okay.
A concept called teleology.
So he even argues
he does
that a lot of modern art deviates from this standard of objective beauty.
He does,
citing controversial pieces like
what?
The Piz Christ artwork.
Oh, right.
That's an example.
Right, okay.
Okay, so now I'm really curious to hear his take on religion.
Yeah,
he's clearly a very spiritual person.
Spiritual person.
But what are his views on organized religion?
Yeah, what does he think about Christianity?
Yeah, what does he think about the state of modern Christianity?
Well, he has some strong opinions on this.
Okay.
He's expressed concern about the decline of traditional values.
Okay.
And the rise of what he calls cultural Marxism.
Cultural Marxism. Okay, that's a pretty loaded term.
It is.
What does he mean by that?
From his perspective, it's about a shift in values.
Okay.
A move away from traditional ideas. About morality, family.
Okay.
And even national identity.
Okay.
He sees it as a force that's eroding the foundations of Western civilization.
And he even sees this ideology infiltrating religious institutions.
Yeah, he's critical of Pope Francis, suggesting that he's embracing these harmful narratives. Yeah, it's a pretty controversial stance.
It is.
But, it does reflect a growing divide within Christianity with traditional interpretations of faith.
Right.
Clashing with more progressive views.
And what about Langan's, personal religious journey?
Yeah, has he always been a devout Christian?
Yeah.
Well, he talks about attending a small country church for many years.
Okay.
But eventually developing his own spiritual practices.
So it sounds like his faith has evolved over time.
Yeah.
Moving beyond traditional religious structures to embrace a more personal and individualized approach.
An individualized approach
to spirituality.
Yeah, and he ends this part of the conversation with a really powerful statement.
Oh, what does he say?
He says, God does not tolerate evil.
Okay.
And neither should we.
That's a strong message. It sounds like he's calling us to action.
It does.
To actively oppose evil in the world.
Rather than just passively accepting it.
Rather than being passive about it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so before we get into that, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And we'll come back and we'll dive deeper into Langan's thoughts on truth, meaning and the role of humanity in a complex and often chaotic world.
Can't wait.
We'll be right back after this break.
That statement, man, it really makes you think.
It does.
Where does personal responsibility even fit in, when we're talking about these powerful global forces that seem so far beyond our control?
That's a big question.
It is.
And one that Langan grapples with throughout this interview.
Right.
He acknowledges the immense power of these structures.
Right.
But he also maintains that we still have a choice in how we respond.
That reminds me of something I heard recently about confirmation bias.
Okay.
That we tend to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right. So how do we break free from that?
Yeah.
How do we actually get to the truth?
How do we get to that truth? Yeah.
It's a tough question.
It is, especially in today's world.
Especially today.
Where information is it's so readily manipulated and distorted, right?
Right. And Langan himself. I mean, the guy's been called a conspiracy theorist, dismissed by academics.
Yeah.
He even had his Wikipedia page, hijacked.
Wow. It makes you wonder, right?
It makes you wonder.
If it's even possible to find the truth.
Yeah, is it even possible?
When there's so much noise.
So much noise out there.
And misinformation
out
there.
Yeah, it does make you question the whole system.
It really does.
Doesn't it?
Langan seems to think a lot of academics, right?
Right.
They're just afraid to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, he even says
what does he say?
that there are no living academic philosophers.
Oh, wow.
Worth reading.
Wow, okay.
Because they've all bought into the system.
Because they've all bought it. All right, I'm curious, though.
Yes.
Who does he recommend we read, if not modern thinkers?
Yeah, who should we be reading?
He suggests going back to the classics.
Okay,
philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, Socrates.
The OGs.
The OGs, yeah. He even highlights Neoplatonism.
Okay.
And its influence on medieval Christianity.
So he's saying we need to look to the past.
Yeah, kind of.
For wisdom and guidance.
For wisdom and guidance, yeah.
But isn't there a danger in that?
What do you mean?
In dismissing all modern thought.
Yeah.
I mean, surely there are some contemporary philosophers
you'd think,
who have valuable insights to offer.
You would think, but he doesn't seem to think so.
He doesn't.
He seems to view a lot of modern philosophy as corrupted by ideology.
And what ideology is that?
Particularly, what he calls cultural Marxism.
We keep coming back to this term.
It keeps popping up.
Cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about what Langan actually sees as the dangers of this
ideology?
This ideology, yeah.
So from his perspective, it's about a shift in values, right? Okay. A move away from traditional ideas about morality, family, and even national identity.
Okay.
He sees it as a force that's eroding the foundations of Western civilization.
And he even sees this ideology
infiltrating
religious institutions.
He does, yeah. He's critical of Pope Francis, suggesting that he's embracing what Langan sees as these harmful narratives.
Harmful narratives. That's a pretty controversial stance.
It is. But, it does reflect this growing divide within Christianity.
This growing divide.
Right, with traditional interpretations of faith clashing with more progressive views.
It's fascinating to hear his take on this.
Yeah.
He talks about how he attended a small country church for many years, but eventually developed his own spiritual practices.
So it sounds like he's found a more personal
and individualized approach to his faith.
Right. It seems like he's really emphasizing that personal connection.
The personal connection
to the divine, right?
Seeking out your own path.
Your own path.
To understanding and experiencing God.
And he makes a very strong statement.
He does.
When he says God does not tolerate evil.
Right.
And neither should we.
Powerful statement.
So I wonder what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, how do we actually
combat these forces?
That he sees as harmful.
He seems to advocate for a more localized approach.
Localized?
Yeah, starting with our own communities.
Okay.
Or local politicians.
Okay, but is that enough?
That's a good question.
Yeah, can we really counter the influence of these global forces?
Yeah, can we counter that?
By just focusing on local issues.
He seems to believe that if enough people push back against this agenda, it will eventually crumble.
It's a hopeful perspective.
It is.
But I gotta admit, I'm a little skeptical.
I get it.
These global forces seem
so
entrenched.
So entrenched.
So powerful.
So powerful.
That's what's hard to imagine them.
I know.
Just backing down.
It would require a massive shift in consciousness.
Right.
A collective awakening to the dangers of this centralized control.
And Langan's concerns, they go beyond just political structures,
right? They do, yeah.
He's also worried about the cultural implications of globalization.
Right,
arguing that it's leading to the erasure of national identities.
Right.
And a kind of cultural
homogenization.
Homogenization, yeah. He's not alone in that concern.
He's not.
No, a lot of people feel like globalization is leading to
a loss of cultural diversity and uniqueness.
Yeah, they see it as a threat to their traditions.
Their traditions and their way of life.
Right, and he's particularly concerned about the decline of traditional values.
Yeah.
And what he sees as the rise of destructive ideologies. Particularly related to sexuality and gender.
Right. He's a strong critic of the transgender movement.
Okay.
Suggesting it represents a rejection of natural constraints or an attempt to redefine reality itself.
That's a sensitive topic.
Very sensitive topic.
It's important to acknowledge that these are complex issues. With strong opinions.
Strong opinions.
On both sides.
On both sides, yeah.
Langan is definitely not afraid to.
He's not afraid to
express his opinions.
No.
Even when they're
controversial.
And his perspective on this is rooted in his belief.
In his belief that
there are objective truths.
Objective truths about reality.
About reality.
Including those related to human nature.
So he sees deviations from those truths
as dangerous.
And ultimately destructive.
This
raises a big question, though. About
tolerance.
tolerance and free speech.
Yeah. Where do we draw the line?
Right. Where's the line?
Between respecting individual choice
right.
and upholding
what
we believe to be moral standards.
Yeah, that's a debate.
It's a debate.
That's happening all over the world.
All over the world.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And Langan, I mean, he draws a clear line.
He does.
When it comes to issues affecting children.
Okay.
He's especially critical of things like drag queen story hour.
Okay.
Arguing that it exposes kids to adult themes that are
inappropriate and potentially harmful.
Harmful. That's another very contentious issue.
Very contentious issue.
Some argue that exposure to diverse gender expressions promotes tolerance. Right.
Tolerance.
While others worry about the potential for, sexualizing children. Or confusing them about their own identities.
Langan's stance on this is clear. He sees
these kinds of practices as a form of
child abuse.
Child abuse. And believes society has a responsibility to protect children from them.
Sounds like this boils down to a fundamental
in values.
Difference in values.
Right.
Yeah. You've got those who prioritize individual expression and experimentation. And then on the other side, you have those who believe in upholding traditional notions of childhood innocence, protecting children from potentially harmful influences. So it's a clash.
It's a clash
of worldviews. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, what do we do?
How do we navigate these complex issues and find common ground?
Right.
I think it's helpful to remember that. Langan's views, while controversial, they are rooted in his deep concern for humanity.
It's our humanity.
He sees these trends as threats to our well-being.
Right.
Not just on a societal level, but also
on an individual level. That's a good point. He's not
just trying to be
provocative.
Provocative for the sake of it. No.
He genuinely believes. That these things are harmful.
Yeah.
And even if we disagree with his conclusions, I think it's valuable to at least understand his perspective.
Understand it and try to engage with his ideas.
Engage with them
in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And let's not forget, I mean, Langan has some fascinating insights into the nature of intelligence.
Intelligence and
consciousness.
Consciousness.
He reminds us that IQ isn't the only measure
of
intelligence. Right.
Yeah.
Emphasizing the importance of what he calls mental aperture.
Right, that mental aperture, it's about expanding your perspective.
Right.
Seeing the bigger picture. And making connections between seemingly disparate ideas.
And Langan is a great example of this.
He is.
Himself.
Yeah.
He's chosen a path that prioritizes intellectual freedom over
conventional
measures of success.
He's willing to think outside the box.
To
challenge assumptions.
Explore
unconventional ideas, right.
Even if it means facing criticism and rejection.
Even if it means facing that. Yeah, and his willingness to engage with ideas like the simulation hypothesis and the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Right.
It really demonstrates that.
That open-mindedness and curiosity.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to question everything.
And
look for answers in unexpected places.
Right? Yeah. So what about this big question of meaning and purpose?
Right. In a universe that Langan describes as potentially self-simulating, right?
Self-simulating.
Governed by metacausation.
Right.
Populated by both angels and demons.
Where do we find meaning?
Right. Where's the meaning in all of that?
Yeah.
That's where Langan's spirituality comes in.
He believes that we find meaning through our relationship with God.
Through God. Okay.
He sees our souls as connected to the divine.
Okay.
And by nurturing that connection, we tap into a source of truth, meaning, and power.
Okay.
that transcends the material world.
So he's encouraging us to...
He's encouraging us to,
actively seek out this
connection.
Connection.
Yeah, and not through blind faith.
Not through blind faith.
But through reason.
Through reason.
And spiritual practice.
And spiritual practice, yeah.
He sees this as the path to true fulfillment. A way to transcend limitations.
Right.
And align ourselves with the higher purpose.
With the higher purpose, it sounds like he's advocating for a more conscious
an intentional
approach to spirituality.
Spirituality, yeah.
It's not just about
not going to church or following ritual.
Following rituals, right.
No, it's about actively cultivating that relationship with the divine.
And he gives some very practical advice, he says.
What's he say?
If you want to connect with God, just ask.
Just ask.
He believes that God is always available.
Available to us.
To us.
Waiting for us to reach out.
Waiting for.
And establish that personal relationship.
It's a simple but powerful.
It is. It is a simple but powerful message.
We don't need elaborate rituals or complicated theological doctrines.
Right.
What matters most is the sincerity
of our desire
to connect with something greater than ourselves.
I think that's a really encouraging message.
It is, especially for people who might be disillusioned with organized religion or struggling to find meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and meaningless.
Right.
And Langan, he reminds us that there's more to life.
More to life
than just
material pursuits.
Material pursuits.
True wealth, he says, is about aligning ourselves with higher values.
With higher values, right.
It's truth, beauty.
Truth, beauty.
And the pursuit of
purpose.
Purpose.
He actually sees beauty as an
objective standard.
Objective standard, not just a matter of personal preference.
Personal preference.
Right.
He believes it's connected to teleology.
Teleology, the idea that everything has a
purpose. Right.
Yeah, and that ties back into his concept of the telic economy.
The telic economy, right.
He's saying that we shouldn't just be focused on accumulating money and possessions.
You should be.
We should also be
investing in our spiritual growth. Spiritual growth, seeking knowledge. Understanding and beauty.
Understanding beauty. It's about living a life.
Living a life.
That's aligned with our values.
With our values.
And our purpose.
And our purpose, yeah.
A life that transcends the material realm. And connects us to
just something
larger.
Larger.
And more meaningful.
And more meaningful.
So what does all this mean?
What does all this mean?
For you, the listener.
For you, yeah. What can we take away?
What can we take away?
From this deep dive into
the mind of Christopher Langan.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is the importance of questioning everything.
Question everything.
Don't just accept what you're told.
Don't just accept it, no.
Do your own research.
Do your research.
Think
critically.
Come to your own conclusions. Don't be afraid to.
Challenge the status quo.
Challenge the status quo.
Langan is a great example of someone who's not afraid to think outside the box.
Think outside the box.
Even if it means facing criticism or ridicule.
Right. He also reminds us
that
intelligence isn't just about IQ, right.
It's about mental aperture. The ability to see the bigger picture. Make those connections.
And expand your perspective. And finally, he encourages us to cultivate our spiritual side, to seek out that connection. With the divine, however that looks for you.
Right?
Yeah. Whether it's through prayer, meditation,
spending time in nature,
or
simply reflecting on
the mysteries of the universe. There are many paths to spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Langan's story is a reminder.
It's a reminder
that we're not just physical beings.
We're
also spiritual beings. And nurturing that
spiritual side is essential for finding true meaning and purpose in life.
So as we wrap up this second part of our deep dive We want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
From Christopher Langan.
Okay.
He says,
what's he say?
It's through our connection with God that we find true meaning and purpose.
I like that.
Whether you agree with Langan's specific beliefs or not, I think that's a message that resonates deeply with all of us.
With all of us.
We all long for meaning and purpose in our lives.
And purpose in our lives.
And perhaps the key to finding that.
Yeah, the key to finding that
is to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Something that transcends the limitations.
That transcends the limitations
of our physical existence.
Of our physical existence.
That's a good point.
We're gonna pick up right here.
Sounds good.
In part 3
of our deep dive.
Our deep dive
into the mind
of Christopher Langan.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Into the mind of Christopher Langan.
We've covered a lot of ground from his concept of the telic economy to his thoughts on globalism and the nature of consciousness.
Yeah, I have to say I'm still processing some of these ideas.
Me too. I think what strikes me the most about Langan is his unwavering commitment to truth. And his willingness to challenge conventional thinking.
He really does encourage us to think for ourselves, to question everything.
Question everything.
And not just accept the narratives that are being fed to us.
Fed to us, yeah.
By those in power.
He's basically saying, don't be a sheep, you know?
Don't be a sheep.
Use your mind.
Use your mind.
Do your research.
Do your own research.
Come to your own conclusions.
Right, and he's not just talking about intellectual pursuits.
He's also emphasizing the importance of spiritual growth.
Spiritual growth.
And developing that personal relationship with God.
Right, he sees that as the ultimate source of meaning and purpose.
Of meaning and purpose, right?
And he's not saying that we should blindly follow like dogma or religious institutions.
No, he's advocating for a more personal
and experiential approach to spirituality. That's seeking out that direct connection with the divine.
Right, and he gives some pretty practical advice.
He does
for cultivating that connection. He says,
what's he say?
Just ask.
Just ask.
He believes God is always available.
Always available to us.
To us, waiting for us to reach out.
To reach out, yeah.
And establish
that relationship.
That relationship.
It's a simple but powerful message.
It is a simple but powerful message.
We don't need those elaborate rituals.
We don't.
Or those complicated theological doctrines.
Right.
What matters most is the sincerity of our desire. To connect with something greater than ourselves.
I think that's a really encouraging message. Especially for people who might be,
disillusioned with
organized religion.
Yeah.
Or struggling
to find meaning. To find meaning in a world that often feels
chaotic and meaningless.
Yeah,
Langan reminds us that there's more to life than just material pursuits.
Than just those material pursuits.
He says true wealth.
Yeah, true wealth is about
aligning ourselves with higher values.
With those higher values.
Truth, beauty.
The
pursuit of purpose.
He actually sees beauty as an objective standard.
Not
just a matter of personal preference.
Right.
He believes it's connected to teleology. The idea that everything has a purpose.
Right. And that ties back into his concept of the telic economy.
Right, the telic economy.
He's saying that we shouldn't just be focused on accumulating money and possessions.
Right.
We should also be investing in our spiritual growth, seeking knowledge, understanding,
and beauty.
It's about living a life that's aligned with our values, and our purpose, a life that transcends the material realm
and connects us to something.
It connects us to larger and more meaningful.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
For you,
what can we take away from this deep dive
into the mind of Christopher Langan?
I think the biggest takeaway for me, is the importance of questioning everything.
Question everything.
Don't just accept what you're told.
Don't just accept it, no.
Do your research. Think critically.
Think critically.
Come to your own conclusions.
Come to your own conclusions. Don't be afraid to...
Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Challenge the status quo. Langan's a great example of someone who isn't afraid to think outside the box.
Think outside the box, even if it means facing that criticism or ridicule.
Right.
He also reminds us that intelligence isn't just about IQ.
Not just about IQ.
It's about mental aperture.
Mental aperture. The ability to see the bigger picture, make connections, expand your perspective.
And finally, he encourages us to cultivate our spiritual side.
Cultivate your spiritual side.
To seek out that connection.
Seek out that connection, yeah.
With the divine, however that looks for you.
However that looks for you.
Whether it's through prayer, meditation, spending time in nature, or simply reflecting on the mysteries of the universe.
There are many paths to spiritual growth.
Langan's story is a reminder that we're not just physical beings.
Right. We're also
spiritual beings.
Spiritual beings.
And nurturing that spiritual side.
Nurturing that
is essential.
Is essential for finding true meaning and purpose in life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
yeah,
we hope you found it as thought-provoking and insightful as we did.
We did.
Until next time, keep questioning.
Keep seeking.
And keep diving deep.